And while we're waiting on Michael to dial in, I'm going to share with you. Last night we went over to Ryan, my son, and Gabby's at Aria's house, and we breathed all three of them. And it was absolutely awesome. We had told Aria ahead of time, you know, what it was. Still point breathing, kind of explained to her and how to breathe, you know, through her mouth and circular breathing. And I said, and if you get finished before Mommy and Daddy do, I said, you can, you know, get up real quietly and you can help us do energy work on them. She's 5 years old, and she laid there the entire time. It was right at an hour. And she breathed. She did beautifully. And, you know, even as a child, you know, we could tell that she was going into her own little still points, and her legs would wiggle and her fingers would wiggle. But she laid there so wonderfully. It was amazing. And Ryan he stayed in still point more than he was out of it. And Gabby had some awesome releases. And Michael and I rotated between the three of them doing energy work on them. And when it was over, and Michael would say, bring your breath up to your chest. He was talking to either Ryan or Gabby, and Aria would go and breathe real deep and bring up her chest. And afterwards, when Gabby came back first, and then Aria, when she saw her mom was up, she sat up, and then Ryan came in a few minutes later. But she said, are we finished? And I said, yeah. I said, that's it. And she goes, that was really nice. And so it was amazing to have breathed the entire family. And Michael's with us. I don't know if you want to add to that.
That it was really sweet, you know, for her at the age of 5, and she's an active, on-the-go kid at 5, for her to just be there and breathe for an hour, just stay right with it. I expected her to, you know, cut her breathing short, and she didn't. She just stayed with it for the whole time, and so it was pretty sweet space, and a nice gift for us to receive and to give. So, you know, when you understand the breathing work and the energy field work, it's such an awesome gift to give someone. And, you know, as with all of these tools, the objective is, or the recognition is, that this is something that anybody can do. This doesn't take some big, you've got to have 6 PhDs or anything else. It's a set of tools that are meant to be used by persons. And it's interesting. I was actually just watching this morning. You know, we do a lot of YouTube time for our garden, and I was watching a thing on ladybugs. And the woman who's doing the research, they're trying to discover and synthesize a ladybug scent, which tends to drive aphids away from crops. And she gave, when they said, well, why are you doing this? And they gave a whole list of reasons. But the real reason is because there's somebody's going to make money off of it. They discover something that'll replace the ladybug, there'll be a buck in it. And sadly, that's become true about things spiritual, things healing, like you have to be a specialist, you have to have, you know, this and that. And, you know, if you look at most societies, professional societies, one of the main objectives of them is to make sure that competition stays out. We own this. And this is something we're really clear belongs to humanity, belongs to anyone and everyone who chooses to put it to work. So we're here to support and here to make the tools available. And I was thinking that with Aria, that, you know, earlier in her life we have breathed her, but it's mostly just been by breathing in her ear and us being in that connected breath space and just being with her. I think maybe 2 or 3 times we've actually done a still point session with her. This is the most extensive, and so I can see her growing into someone who will be giving that gift to many, many people in the future. So it's pretty sweet. Pretty sweet. So we're delighted that you're here to be part of our process. And hopefully, Blog Talk has ironed out its problems. It seems like maybe we're back on track with them. And Jeanie, I don't think we've really heard any explanation about what has been going on yet, have we?
No, that's one thing that I really like about Podbean is they actually send me an email back with logical answers. And the only thing that I have gotten, when I had actually written, to Blog Talk and was like, is this just our show or whatever? Please give me an explanation. And their answer back was, we apologize for the issue and inconvenience it may cause. Troubles with connecting to Blog Talk Studio Direct Connect have been resolved, which they had previously told me it was to dial in that way, and I wrote back and said it doesn't work. And then let us know if you're still having difficulties. And they gave no explanation as to what was going on. And so that brought up some frustration for me.
God, an opportunity to learn forgiveness. How cool is that?
I know. But anyway, I'm still pursuing. I mean, I've put in, I don't know how many hours into the Podbean, and I'm still pursuing it. And, we may run both simultaneously for a while. I tried yesterday to run a microphone and actually leave my phone on, like speakerphone, and see if I could do it that way, but there's too much noise between the, kind of like a squelch or a feedback or something, and so that doesn't work. And I did ask them, is there a way that we can connect and run them both simultaneously, and I haven't got an answer on that one yet. But I think they're a good backup to have, and we've already been accepted by several other radio stations through Podbean, and so I think it would get us out there a little further than what we're doing right now anyway. We'll see.
Yeah.
Just stay tuned. Look at your email that I sent explaining how to go ahead and have Podbean on your phone, and that way, if one day you try to call in and Blog Talk's not working, we'll have the ability then to immediately switch over and do the other one. So you need to have it already set up and click that you're following us. And actually yesterday when I clicked as if I were doing a live show on Podbean, and it gave me a message on my other, tablet and other phone that it had gone live. So if you're already signed up and you click that you're following us on that, then if we do have a live show on it, it will send you a message and say, Mindshifters Radio on Podbean is now live. So then you can just click right over it. To a really nice reminder for people to turn on their podcast. And if you're not on their email list and you didn't get that email, you can drop me a line at Jeanie@whyagain.org, and I will add you to the mailing list. And you can also go to our website, and under the section that says multimedia, there is a link that says news, newsletters, and you can click there, and the link to all of the newsletters or emails that we have sent out is still there. So you can click on any of them you missed and get up to date.
Cool. So do you have anybody out there with a hand up in the phone queue or anything happening in the chat room, sweetie?
No, it's all quiet. I had read something to you this morning, and you said for me to read it on the show. So
yes,
go ahead
let's
and do
read that. Please, let's read it.
I don't know the person that wrote it. The credit's given to someone named Carri Solomon, but it's a good lesson for all of us to take in. She says, as I was pulling into work, I was following this car, and the sign in the back window said, quote, I'm learning to drive stick. Sorry for any delays, unquote, talking about stick shift. Knowing this information, I was very patient with their slow shifting, and honestly, they were doing pretty well for still being in the learning phase. Then I asked myself a tough question. Would I have been just as patient if the sign hadn't been there? I can almost definitely say no. We don't know what someone's going through. We don't wear signs that illustrate our personal struggles. You don't see signs taped to a person's shirt that says going through a divorce or lost a child or feeling depressed or just diagnosed with cancer. If we could read visually what those around us are going through, we would definitely be nicer. But we shouldn't have to see signs or have a reason to treat strangers with kindness. We should do it anyway, whether we know what's going on or not, whether we think they deserve it or not. Let's give everyone an extra dose of patience, kindness, and love, and have a happy and healthy new year.
Powerful lesson, simple, inspiration to function out of and as the power of the presence of love. So thank you for sharing that. Thanks for sharing that this morning. It was sweet to just be with those thoughts. I've had a couple of conversations with people who've been asking questions about codependence, and so I thought I might review a couple of the ideas or the basis of the whole codependence to interdependence intensive that we do in the worksheet that, well, we have two worksheets out of that workshop. One is the codependence to interdependence worksheet, and then we have Power Person worksheet. And our simplest definition, actually, the definition of a codependent relationship is exactly the same as our definition of denial. Whenever I think or speak as though something inside of me is the cause of what's moving in me, and that causes, or pardon me, that something outside of me is the cause of what's moving in me, then I'm in denial, which means I have to dissociate and hide from myself the truth. Codependence does exactly the same thing. When I've been in a codependent relationship, you made me feel this way, I have to hide from the real cause of my feeling, and I get to live in the lie that my mind tells me. Now, recall that there are three things that happen that cause this power person dynamic to be instilled in a person's mind. And basically, it has been so instilled in the world mind that virtually everyone, every communication that you hear, comes from a space of codependence, comes from a space of projection communication. You know, in the intensive, the communication part of that workshop is entitled Communication, Did You Hear What I Think I Said? And most people use words to describe, you know, when they're in that codependent state or in the denial, we're in the place where you made me mad. Mad is an image painted on the inside of their eyeballs, hallucinated by the mind, and they use words to try to convince the person that they're projecting that on that it's their responsibility that this is moving. So they speak the lie that their power person spoke to them. So let's retrace that. Three things occur. One, power person had more power over the child's life than the child did themselves. And it's usually a parent and a child, although not necessarily. It can happen in adulthood too. So that's number one. The parent has more control than the child. Two, the parent, or the senior partner in the codependence event, is not functioning as a human being, is not functioning out of love. And three, the child perceives that situation as survival. When those three things occur simultaneously, that child's energy field opens when you think of them as being an energetic being. You know, if we listen to Einstein, Einstein says this: on such things as matter, we have been all wrong. What we have heretofore called matter is energy, energy whose vibration have been so lowered as to be perceptible to the senses. There is no matter. Here's probably one of the greatest scientific minds of all time telling us there is no matter. And of course, everybody looks around and goes, wait a minute, we got a whole world of matter out there. Look at it. Well, everything that you think you're looking at with your eyes is a picture painted on the inside of your eyeballs by your brain. There's nothing actual about it. They are images that are useful for your survival. They're useful for moving forward, but they're not true. And especially when you're blaming somebody else. And virtually everybody in our culture, by the age of 4, the culture is so descended into blame that virtually every member that grows up in other than a fully conscious family is a card-carrying member of the one world religion of blame. That's like the State of the Union. If we had a State of the Union address and we were to assess how many people of the 200 or 350 million or so people there are in America, probably an accurate address would say that 349,999,996 of them are one world members of the one world religion of blame. It's all somebody else's fault. So when you're looking at a picture in your mind, you're looking at a thing called perception. Which is the Course in Miracles. The Course in Miracles says perception is a skill made up by you to take the place of what the Creator gave you in creation. So the Creator gave us actuality. Multi-quadrillion bit world, who knows how many bits of data are there, and the brain gives us a picture based in 9 bits of data. So perception replaces the experience of the world as the world actually exists. Now, when one has accepted or unconsciously this power person dynamic has been built within them, for the rest of their lives, their behavior will be controlled by that power person dynamic. And in fact, there are only 3 behaviors possible for that individual. And the 3 behaviors, which one is playing out at any given moment, depends on the level of stress that someone's under. When there is little or no stress, we will do whatever we did to get along with our power person. When stress starts to build, we'll do whatever we did to resist and survive with our power person. When we become ultra-stressed, we'll do the behavior that the power person did to us that we hated the most. So that runs the world. So when I'm trapped in a power person dynamic, this person in my life, maybe my power person has been gone from the world for many years, but this person in my life does a behavior that resonates a thought disorder that was implanted by my power person. The message, the lie, remember, whenever perception is described as accurate about anything other than the internal world, you've now entered into a lie. So whatever is painted on the inside of your eyeballs is always true about you. It may accidentally, incidentally be true about the world, but you know for sure that it's true about you. When you then insist that what is happening in your perceptual world is caused by someone else, what will happen is it will sound like your voice speaking the lie that you were told by your power person, and you're telling it to someone else as though it's true about them. The very thought disorder that you were lied to by your power person about, you will now, and again, it will sound like your voice, but what it will really be is your power person's voice coming through you. And that's how a power person implants a thought disorder in the child's mind. So when that thought disorder is resonated by someone, and this is the whole core of why we engage in the forgiveness process, because when you become conscious of the thought disorder, that was implanted by your power person, because your power person was talking to you about their perception and trying to convince you that their perception was true about you. When you try to convince someone else that the words describing the picture painted on the inside of your eyeballs are true about them, then the truth is it's your power person's voice coming through. Take a second to breathe on that and have it sink in. So the mind will believe the lie that it's being told. It's being painted on the inside of its eyeballs because that lie is a product of a thought disorder and an energy that was absorbed in interaction with the power person. And my offering is the reason why we give those messages to others. And I think this is a really key point in the whole process as far as healing goes, is when we tell someone the perceptual lie about how we can see clearly that what's going on in us is caused by them, it's an unconscious attempt to resolve the lie that your power person told you about yourself. And when you start doing worksheets around that, when you start doing the CoDependence worksheet, when you step into responsibility communication, one of the other tools, one of the other ways to resolve this is that in responsibility, in the world's standard projection communication, you made me, you shift into, this is what's happening in me, I recognize it's mine, and I recognize you've triggered it, and you probably are the person who's carrying the salve that can help me heal this. Would you support me? Another way to turn the whole game around and to take responsibility for the lie and the unconscious effort to try and rectify this assault once again. And those types of assaults are often quite difficult to work through because they are so deeply embedded in the mind. You know, we did the CoDependence to Interdependence Communication Practicum Intensive that's available as a self-study was 2 14-week intensives. One of them turned into a 17-week. We actually added an extra 3 weeks to that intensive because this power person dynamic was opening up, and we ended up, you know, the power person worksheet for 25 years of me teaching that work was a 1-page worksheet. It's now a 14-page worksheet because we really delved into how do you unwind the mind that's stuck in such a lie that a person, I mean, they really believe it ties back to, remember, one of the dynamics of the power person situation being instilled in the first place is the child believes it's survival. So when that's up, it's survival. And to change the mind in the middle of a survival experience is a really intricate and difficult thing. And it was a result of doing 2 of the CoDependence to Interdependence intensives back to back that we were able to open up and move from that 1-page worksheet to literally to 14 pages that are about unwinding every aspect, being able to observe. Remember, we've talked over and over again about becoming the thinker apart from the thought, the actor apart from the actions, the feeler apart from the feelings. And so that worksheet is designed to empower you to step back and really unwind those parts of your mind. So recognizing that perception, as the Course says, is a skill made up by you. And, you know, how can we tell it's made up by the individual? Well, stand 10 people in front of an event, and let's see if any 2 of them were at the same event. Each one of them, their perception, the construct of their minds will be different. You take them into a courtroom after the accident, and somebody swears, the person who's got the prejudice against women drivers swears that the woman driver was the one who went through the red light, when the fact is it was the guy that went through the red light. But the person who has a prejudice against women drivers, their mind only paints a picture that shows them things that are consistent with what they believe. And if you haven't noticed, you'll kind of observe, if you just look around, virtually everybody has a different belief system. Everybody's got different BS. And unwinding that so that everyone ultimately is alleviated of perception. Remember, perception in the ancient teachings, the man Yeshua says, don't judge by appearances. Perception is an appearance. Perception is a picture painted on the inside of your eyeballs. And I mean, if you talk to 99.9% of the world and say, did you know that you've never seen anything with your eyes in your life? They'll look at you and they'll talk to you, think you're nuts. But that's a proven fact. I mean, in the laboratory, they've proven you can't see with your eyes. You can't do it. Everybody goes, oh, I looked out through these eyes and look at what I saw. What you saw was your mind's replication of its content projected into your brain's image of the world. And remember that the deeper the stress is, the deeper the opportunity will be to take responsibility for and heal the power person dynamic. So, little or no stress, you'll do what you did to get along with it. I guarantee, just look at your life. Here's how your life runs. When you're not under stress, you do whatever you did to get along with your power person. And if you were Mr. or Ms. Nice Guy, you'll notice that when you're not under stress, you're Mr. or Ms. Nice Guy. That's your normal persona or personality. Virtually everybody in our culture suffers from multiple personality disorder. When there's little or no stress, things are rocking, Mr. and Ms. Nice Guy. When stress starts to build, people will do what they did to resist and survive with their power person. So now, somebody you've only known in the 10 years you've known them as Mr. and Ms. Nice Guy, all of a sudden, ultra stressed. Or pardon me, not ultra stressed yet, but increased stress. And the person who's always been Mr. and Ms. Nice Guy has a personality change, and they become Mr. and Ms. Snarky. And you look at it and you go like, you've been married for 10 years? Well, what happened? I've never seen this. It's been there all along. There just hasn't been enough stress to bring it up. And then, when the third level of stress happens, when people are ultra stressed, that's when the automatic decision system kicks in, and people are forced by their own minds to do what their power person did to them that they hated the most. And oftentimes when they do that, they will go unconscious and have no memory of it. That's a sign of a true multiple personality disorder. Now, we all have different personas in different circumstances. Nice guy, Mr. Snarky, and then let's say when ultra stressed, the power person was a physical abuser, and all of a sudden someone's ready to take their fists out and beat somebody up. How do one go from Mr. Nice Guy or Ms. Nice Guy to Mr. or Ms. Snarky to Mr. or Ms. Physical abuser or mental abuser or emotional abuser? All you need to do is crank the stress up. This is one of the reasons to do worksheets on a regular basis, because you'll notice that the reason or the cause of all stress is a goal in your mind. And you'll notice the core of the worksheet of the forgiveness process is about canceling goals, reducing stress, moving away from those old power person dynamics back to the truth of who you are. So you're not being run by your mind anymore. You're being run from the level of being. You're being run from your soul. You've actually opened choice rather than functioning out of the decisions of the past. So when you're in that state, ultra stressed, you're speaking the thought disorders that your power person's mind told them was true about you, and they passed it on to you, and then they try to convince you that it's true about you. I.e., there's something wrong with you. And the first, message that usually comes from a power person is something to the effect of, you're broken. I was speaking to a physician the other day that's been doing this work for about 35 years, and he had just this monumental opening this past weekend. He was on the phone with me for about 2 hours processing a major opening that took him into the direct experience of his life from a state of being, because he was able to collapse that power person dynamic, and it was just like mind-boggling for him. In fact, as a result of it, we're talking about maybe going down to Sarasota in March and doing a 1-week practicum there, a 1-week intensive at his center.
May.
Pardon me, May. Yes, thank you, sweetie. So if you're interested in doing a pretty deep, intensive practicum, actually he does a lot of alternative type medicine, a lot of really amazing treatments. And if you're interested in doing that, put it on your calendar for last week of May. We haven't confirmed it yet, but we're talking about it. So under stress, the message that you hated, but incorporated into your perception of yourself in the world, you speak to someone else, which unconsciously, if you can be the observer of your own hostility and fear-based states, gives you the opportunity to see when you were told what you were told, and to recognize that it's not true. You were told it was true about you. Your power person's lie, and we're not talking about a lie that somebody sits down and thinks, I think I'll tell a lie. It's about, I would estimate, probably 99.999% of the time, it's just a power person message that's gone from generation to generation to generation. And if you can step back from your mind, if you can breathe, each time you forgive, these energetic patterns come with a certain amplitude. If I'm sitting around and I want to be in a quiet space and somebody comes in and turns on a radio, it can be difficult for me to be in that meditative quiet space. The louder the volume gets, the more difficult it is for me to stay centered in my own mind and in that meditative space. Forgiveness, when you apply it to these power person dynamics, each time you apply it, literally weakens the intensity or the amplitude of that energetic pattern in your mind, so that the next time it fires, it's a little weaker, and the next time it fires, it's a little weaker yet, and the next worksheet, it's a little weaker yet again, until you get to the point where you can stay centered in being and observe your own mind in operation. And recognize that perception can only begin to give us the edges of the truth. Share your hostility and fear-based content. The lies you've been told have been resolved, that you've been freed of them. And of course, when you tell this object of your attention your lie, you're under stress, and you put out a message that your power person gave you that you pass on, you will interpret that, well, they just misunderstood you. They didn't understand what you were saying. Because, of course, you never passed on a lie to them. You never did the behavior that your power person did to you to them. That would just be too hard to bear, too much to bear. And so you put it in the arena of, well, you just didn't understand. It's like, excuse me, if you were speaking from hostility, fear, degradation, condemnation, fear-based thought, what could go wrong based thought, you were probably speaking from a power person dynamic. And yeah, you can bring that all down to, well, you see, they didn't understand. You'll notice how many times in your life, if that's the way you play it, you notice how many times in your life there's always been someone who you understood, but they didn't. But if you just watch your mind, if you listen, if you'll just, even for a moment, breathe and collapse just one goal, then you'll create an opening where some of those old dynamics will start to come up, and you'll start to have some, at least edges of the memories where your power person played that same game out with you. And if you'll follow that thread, you'll get to the root of that conflict from within your relationship. So as we recognize how that dynamic works, it's just, I mean, literally, again, everything in the world is run by it. Business, government, church, family, community. That's the dynamic. Those three behaviors are the limit on virtually every mind you see until one resolves this power person dynamic within themselves. And as far as I know, on planet Earth, this power person dynamic has never been fully explained or understood until this work of codependence to interdependence came about 25 years ago. There's nowhere I've seen it on the planet. We get clues about it. In the scriptures they talk about, look to the lives of the fathers, far as but a shadow of theirs upon the earth. The sins of the fathers will be passed to you unto truth. They allude to it, but they get down to the very specifics of how stress causes the mind to use those messages, which were lies, and integrate those lies into your brain's image of others that you're blaming and passing the lie on. That's how the world gets dulled down until being no longer has a space to express, no longer has a space to function in the world. And so one of the objectives of this work is to open the space where it gets safe enough. In every circumstance, to breathe, to own, and to move through, to be able to receive feedback from the world without going into a huff and pointing the finger at them, just to receive the feedback and go, well, let me look at that. Rather than, you don't understand, this is your fault. Notice how your power person, you don't understand, this is your fault. And most people's whole lives are run by it. I mean, I don't care whether you're 12 or 90, most people's lives are run by that. And if you'll do the work on an ongoing basis of keeping your stress down through forgiveness, then there'll be less and less inclination to move into that level of insanity, and more of an ability will develop because you'll step into a strengthened awareness of yourself as the presence of love, and apart from the perceptions in your mind, and apart from the image in your mind of who you thought you were. So that's, at least in part, what we're here to do, is to make those tools available, make that understanding available, and to give people a logical path to doing their work. So I hope that fits and it makes sense. And we're down to about 20 minutes. So, Ms. Jeanie, do we have anybody in the phone queue with the hand up or anything happening in the chat room?
No, it is all quiet. So someone press 1. We've got 20 minutes.
Well, if you're out there in listener land, I'm complete with my thoughts, with my monologue. So what's on your mind? Tell us what's happening. How can we support you? Our call-in number, if you're in one of those stations where we can't see you, is 563-999-3581. 563-999-3581. Call that number, and you'll be listening to the show directly. And if you push 1, we'll be having a conversation. So push 1, let's have a conversation. How can we support you? What's on your mind? Maybe you're out there and we haven't talked to you in a long, long time. Push 1, say hello. Tell us what's on your mind. What are you working on? What's happening in your world? What's your new year going to look like? How is your work going? What question do you have about any of the worksheets? What's a success you've had with the tools that you could share with us to inspire others? And are you breathing? We are going to begin on the 15th of this month, 15th of January. It's amazing to think it's 2024 already. But we're going to begin a study of, or working with, the book Enlightenment, which is what we've published so far from the Khabouris Manuscript on the Aramaic language. And it's a text that's broken down into 3 parts. One tells a story about the finding of the Khabouris and some of what it's about. It's called the Khabouris Manuscript because it was found in a monastery on the Khabur River in Turkey. The second section of the book is some select passages from the New Testament. And then the third section is a first century dictionary. One of the things that the 25 Aramaic translators, some of the world's top Aramaists back in the time when the original translation work was done, which was back in the 70s, one of their directives was to do the best they could to establish the first century meanings of the Aramaic words. And so the third section of the book is an Aramaic dictionary where we look at the first century meanings of those words. And so if you think you might want to participate in that study and participate in a deeper way, then we've set it up so that if you want to purchase the Enlightenment book, which is $25, you can actually purchase it for $26, and we'll pay the shipping. Shipping fee that's added by the programming in the website is $9. So we'll pick that up so that you get the best price possible. And so if you would like to get a copy of that for the beginning point of our work with the Khabouris, you can go to our website, which of course is www.whyagain.org. And at the bottom of the page, you'll see a donate button. If you go to the donate button and donate that $26, and just don't do it through the catalog, because if you do that, it automatically puts shipping in it, and that creates a problem for us. So if you just put it in the donate button and then put a note that gives us your name and your address and the Enlightenment book, then we'll know that's what the donation is for. And we'll get it off to you right away, and hopefully you'll have it before we get started with that whole conversation. If you already have the Enlightenment book, of course, dig it out. You might start doing a little reading now, get the brain cells firing from, when you first got it, if you did some reading of it, and we'll see what unfolds by working with the Enlightenment book. And if you're ready to take your work to the next level, you might want to order the self-study course on codependence to interdependence, the communication practicum. That series of videos, that's actually 2 full 16-day or 17-day intensives, 14-day intensives. The second one of the 14 days became a 17-day because of the extra work we did in the arena of codependence. That whole package of videos is available, along with an additional 2 videos on the understanding of the personal code evaluation, and you get an initial personal code evaluation, and then on completion of the course, you get a post-personal code evaluation, and that gives you specific, tailored to your mind and where your best learning opportunities are, a set of tools and input for proceeding through the whole study course. Again, it's 90 hours of video. You know, if you like an hour of what we're doing here, we went through a systematic process of 90 hours of unfolding, why is this happening to me again, moving into healing through relationships, moving into codependence and the communication process, and mind shifters and still point breathing. So that's the whole 90-hour course. And you get all of the questions and answers process. You know, everybody that participated in the course knew we were recording it for publication. And so if we came across something that was ultra private, that somebody said, oh, I don't want to record this, we would have stopped, although that never happened. So you got the whole thing, all of the interaction, all of the questions, answers, everything that unfolded through 2 really powerful intensives that really opened a lot of space. Actually, the communication worksheet grew significantly out of that after 25 years of it being the same, as did the Power Person worksheet. So the tools have been refined. So all of that's available if you're interested in taking your work to the next level. The cost of that whole package is $600. And of course, your support will be that we're here 5 days a week. So as questions come up, as you step into process and need support through the codependence work, we're here to support you in that. And once again, if you're on one of those stations where we can't see, our call-in number is 563-999-3581. Let's have a conversation about it. How can we support you? What's on your mind? And if we have no questions, no thoughts, everybody's out there, everything's clear as a bell, no questions about anything, then let's look at a kind of a secondary view of this power person dynamic, because the primary, what I'll call an active power person dynamic, is when your power person in this state of being ultra stressed delivers their perceptual lie to you about you. That's a direct power person message. And again, because it's usually with small children, and this is the authority and it's survival, that child's energy field just opens. They become literally like a sponge and just suck in all of the energy in the environment, spoken and unspoken energy. They just become a sponge for taking that information in. And then that information becomes the foundation of the perceptual output of the mind. And whenever one is in that state of denial or codependence, they're literally creating additional unconscious data in their minds, or playing out of unconscious data. And so the unconscious dynamic in their lives tends to grow and grow and grow until people just function unconsciously. They're just like a reactive automaton. It's just, brain cells fire, boom, that's it. But there's also a secondary, or what I call a passive form of power person dynamic, and that is that there's an interaction that happens, and a person makes up the message themselves out of the situation, and it becomes a governing point in their lives. Actually, there was an interesting series on television back, I don't know, probably watched this 2 years ago, and that's where this understanding came in for me. Was, I had not really recognized, and this was actually during one of the intensives we were doing, so it was kind of like everything just came together to go, oh, here's another piece of the puzzle. So the TV series was called Madam Secretary, and this man he's a young boy, and his father is killed in a car wreck, and his mother is dying. The child of 13 is in the car with him during the accident, and the child, the young boy, is trying to save his mother. And of course, through no fault of his own, cannot. The mother's been too seriously injured. But trying so hard and being so emotionally attached to the goal of saving her, he gives himself a message that functions, again, as a passive power person message of, oh, I'm a failure. I'm incompetent. I can't do this. When life demands something of me, I can't do it. So what story do you tell yourself that keeps you trapped in an hostility or fear-based power person dynamic? Or what story, that would be for the passive power person dynamic, and for the active, what story did your power person tell you to convince you? And it's probably a story you heard over and over and over and over again. So what story did your power person tell you about you that convinced you that their conclusion about you must have been true? And it can be, things like, this boy, I'm a failure. When crisis happens, I can't meet the demand. Could have many different forms. Or if it had been himself, just using that as an example in the accident, then, and he survived it, then the message he might give himself is that I have to stay in control to survive, to do this to survive. Maybe went into some form of a rage because there were attackers coming, then the message might be, I have to stay in control, or I have to use rage when threatened. If someone inhibited this young man from saving his mother, then it might have been, the blame game of someone else is to blame for this. Even my best support isn't good enough. My best self isn't good enough. Those kinds of messages that ultimately need to be forgiven. And so it behooves oneself to begin to question, first of all, to be able to own that. I've watched people who, are at very high professional levels, and they simply cannot admit to themselves that, but my family was so different. I never had a power. No, that never happened to me. And they're just, constitutionally incapable of owning the truth of it. Even though, a repeated pattern of behavior happens, and someone points out that repeated pattern of behavior, and yet that person goes, no, not, can't be. Whenever hostility, fear, attack in any mode comes up, you know that there's a power person dynamic behind it. And stepping into, when they said to Yeshua, well, Peter says to Yeshua, how many of these worksheets do I have to do anyway? Is 7 enough? And Yeshua's response is no. Basically, his response is a higher number and an infinite number of worksheets until you're finished with this particular process in your mind is what you're going to do. And because these dynamics go in with such a high energy charge, such a high emotional charge, it takes clearing off a layer, clearing off a layer, clearing off a layer, clearing off a layer until, you can step back. I use the example of, somebody coming in the room playing music until you can actually stay connected inside your own mind and ignore the music, ignore the message that your mind is giving you that's based in that highly charged, painful, emotional power person dynamic. Whenever there's pain being served up by the body-mind unit, there's always a power person dynamic behind it. What's the goal in any given situation that's driving your pained perception? You've got to, in order to become free of that, you've got to cancel the goal that's driving that pain perception so that the pain perception can collapse. Sometimes people get that backward and they'll talk about collapsing the goal. No, you don't collapse the goal. You cancel the goal, and as a result of canceling the goal, the pained perception collapses because the perception is driven by that goal. And so whenever your inclination is there to attack another, to blame another, that's the root. That's the basis of a warning signal that it's time to step back and observe your mind in operation and start to change what it forces you to do, how it forces you to feel, how it forces you to act. If you find yourself acting against your own will and choice, it's because there's a power person dynamic in there. And again, whoever you point your verbiage at is a person you're blaming, and then your power person's voice will speak through you. It will sound like yours, and you'll deliver to them the lie that your power person delivered to you. There's something wrong with you. Why aren't you doing it the way I told you? If your power person was always pointing out a danger to you or always letting you know that you were broken, then your messages to others will always be about danger or they're broken. What's wrong with you? Why did you do? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? There can be a million things right with you. Jeanie has a statement that goes, I don't remember exactly the numbers you use, sweetie, but talk about, there can be 100 attaboys, and all it takes is one judgment of negativity, and all the attaboys are driven away. So we invite you to contemplate these dynamics. The reality management worksheet is on our website. If you go to whyagain.org, in the upper left-hand corner, there's a link that says Start Here. That will introduce you to the forgiveness process. If you go to your app store on your phone and type in the words Heartland, H-A-R-T-L-A-N-D, Aramaic forgiveness, you'll be looking at the world's only forgiveness app. Download it. You can do the worksheet process right there on your phone. And if you need support, 5 days a week, from noon till 2 o'clock Eastern Time,